Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And we have a lot of very interesting details and updates, and the most important are coming from Zaporozhye direction. As I understand, Zaporozhye area and Kherson area are going to be the most media loud during the next few months. Of course, there are going to be clashes in Sinkovka, Avdiivka and many other directions, but this direction is very important and I'll explain to you why. Before we start discussing the situation in Kamyansk and Kherson, let's talk a little bit about Robotyne, because today, probably for the first time since the let's say the Ukrainian, not Ukrainian, but since for the previous two or 3 months, even more, maybe 4 months, the Russians published the first video of FPV drone strike inside of Robotyne. And this is very important video because during the Ukrainian counteroffensive, very heavy counteroffensive, they managed to force the Russians to withdraw their positions. They were pushing and the Russians were stepping back, withdrawing, and that was the reason why the FPV drone strikes, the video that we got of FPV drone strikes from the Russian side, were getting more further and further from Robotyne. And when the Russians in January and December launched their counteroffensive, we can see that the Russian FPV drone strikes are getting closer and closer. And today, on the 14th of January, for the first time for the previous few months, we see the strikes inside of the village. So we can say and we can call that the 14th of January is the first official date of the beginning of Russian ground operation inside of the village. The Russian drone was flying something like this. He bypassed this part of Robotyne, then the Russian drone turned to the right, and after that the drone moves to the north, to the top, and somewhere in this area, not somewhere, but this video was geolocated, and on this intersection of roads the Ukrainian forces were damaged and attacked by FPV drone. So the battle has started. But this is not the main topic. The main topic that I would like to discuss with you about Zaporozhye area is the formation of new Russian brigades. First, I saw this update from the Institute of Study of War, and according to this institute, Russian forces may be forming air assault brigades within combined arms ground formations as a part of ongoing large-scale military reforms. Some Russian mil bloggers claimed on January 11th that Russian combined armies are beginning to form air assault brigades, which will act as a specialized units that can conduct landings and reconnaissance behind Ukrainian lines. So this is the most important line, which will act as a specialized units that can conduct landings and reconnaissance behind Ukrainian lines. Russian sources noted that this is not a new concept of the Russian military and drew parallels to Soviet operations in Afghanistan. So if we summarize everything, the ISW, Institute of Study of War, is saying that the Russians are trying to to renew the use of tactics that they used to use, let's say 20 or 30 years ago. And when talking about the facts, the Russians have already launched the creation of 49th Air Assault Brigade, which is the part of 58th Army. And this brigade is operating on Zaporozhye area, to be more precise, in the vicinity of Kamyansk. And for example, today we got the first geolocated video confirmation of the trainings of this brigade. On this video, we can see Russian attack aircraft are pressuring the Ukrainian armed forces in Zaporozhye direction. In the area of the village of Kamyansk, the military was able to drive Ukrainian soldiers into a trap and, as a result of artillery fire, to destroy them. Soldiers of the 49th Air Assault Brigade of the 58th Army train a lot and undergo combat training to effectively work against the Ukrainians. So you might say, so what is the difference? What is the purpose? And what things we might see in the future? What kind of changes we're going to see within the next few months? I'll explain to you. You know that since the beginning of 2023, we saw a lot of offensive operations. The Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians from Robotyne, trying to break this wall, but they lost significant number of hundreds hundreds of thousands of people in armored vehicles, and they haven't managed to achieve anything during Robotin offensive operation. The same story in Vremivka tactical bridgehead, the same story in, let's say, Klishchevka direction. So those attacks were just a waste of manpower and military assets of Ukrainian armed forces. Then the Russians took a decision, or supposed that they would be more successful, the Ukrainians, and basically they repeat the same story. The Russians launched their offensive operation from Krasnogorovka to Avdiivka, and they lost as well significant number of forces. The Russians tried to storm and attack Sinkovka, but we saw the geolocated videos of destroyed Russian armored vehicles and tanks. The only area where the Russians more or less successful is the Russian counterattack in the vicinity of Bogdanovka, but even from this territory we stopped receiving any updates and geolocations as soon as the Russians managed to get the main defense belt. So all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 strongholds between Bogdanovka, Ivanovska and let's say Popovo Forest. And when talking about the previous year, we have just one successful example of offensive operation. There were dozens of them we just discussed, but there was one offensive operation that brought the results that probably the creators of that attack was seeking. And we are talking, you will be surprised, but we are talking about Krynki offensive operation. You might say that the Ukrainians lost significant number of soldiers and so on, and it's true, they lost significant number, but the thing is not about the losses. The thing is about technique, and the thing is about new approach how to penetrate and to destroy enemy fortifications, to encircle soldiers and so on. So basically the Ukrainians, they were using Marines, and that wasn't like air assault operation as we are talking about the new Russian formation 49th Air Assault Brigade. This is Marine brigades, but the purpose and the goals are the same, just the different approaches. For example, when talking about the Ukrainians, they were using Marines because the main road of attack lays along the let's say rivers and islands and the water. So we are talking about these different little bit things. So what did happen? The Ukrainians, they landed their infantry in Krynki, and their main purpose in Krynki, as I understand for now, or maybe they managed to improve their tactics during this attack, was not to attack the Russians, wasn't to, let's say, establish control over Crimea from this territory. No, the main purpose was to hold the territory, and to force the Russians to counterattack. And when the Russians counterattack, the Ukrainians have possibility to do what? Yes, you're right. The Ukrainians had possibilities using FPV drones to attack and destroy the Russian counteroffensive infantry. For example, today we got another video how the Ukrainians' drones were flying above this territory, while the Ukrainians in this area, Marines, were hiding somewhere in the basements without any possibilities to get out. And while the Russians were trying to clear and attack this territory, all those Russian soldiers were attacked by the Ukrainian FPV drone strikes. And this is not the only video, of course. If we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of months, we're gonna see at least, just imagine yourself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 geolocated cases of FPV drone strikes against the Russian soldiers. The Russians from their side tried to attack the Ukrainian boats, mainly trying to destroy their support and the supply. But the main idea is that of this tactic is to drop your forces from one bank to another and to hold the territory. And while the Russians are trying to counterattack this foothold, trying to clear this area, the Ukrainians can use, let's say, the FPV drones to reduce the Russian forces. These Marines in Krynki is like a cheese in the mouse trap. It's like a cheese, and the Russians are the mouse that are trying to eat the cheese. And while they're doing this, the Ukrainians attack them with FPV drones. So once again, not regarding the losses, regarding the situation that there is no future in this foothold, regarding the situation that there is no possibilities for the Ukrainians to do anything with this attack might be most effective and most successful from the Ukrainian side. And now the Russians they understand, of course, the Russians realize that there are no chances to penetrate the modern defense belt, like the modern fortifications, from many lines of fortifications. The Russians realized that they need to start doing something as they did or created in Gostomel in Kiev, when they used the helicopters, bypassed the defense belt, landed the infantry, and they were trying to hold the land until the main forces arrived. So when talking about this territory, how does it correspond with the reality? So as we discussed, the 49th Brigade is operating and trains somewhere in Kamyanska direction. So what is the next, let's say, idea? This is not something new. During the previous conflicts in the world, the military main forces were using the same tactics, but the main purpose of these air assault brigades is to, let's say, the Russians will try to land their infantry somewhere on the northern edge of Kamyansk. Let's call it somewhere in this block. And the main purpose of this attack is to establish, let's say, for 2-3 weeks the stronghold, the fortifications, and the main purpose of this foothold is to repel every single possible Ukrainian counterattack that they will try to do. And while the Russians control this block, and not just control, of course, they will be able to cut the main supplies, let's say that a little bit to the west, a little bit to the east. And while they're doing this, the Ukrainian soldiers who are located to the south of this foothold will not be able to counterattack because they're cut. They're encircled. It's not like a classic encircled, but it's a very big problem. They will not be able to attack to the north. They will not be able to move, let's say, to the east, because this area also will be, let's say, cut by another group, assault group. And the only possible solution for the Ukrainians during this thing is to send reinforcements and to counterattack the Russians, let's say, from Stepnogorsk. And the Ukrainians will do this. They will try to attack, counterattack. And all these forces that will counterattack the Russians will be counterattacked by the Russian FPV drone strikes. So they will try to do this, and as I understand, this is exactly the approach that the Russians are planning to use, maybe on this direction. And while all these things with Ukrainian counterattacks, with encircled Ukrainian soldiers between Russian mainland and the, let's say, air assault foothold, the other Russian main forces will try to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt, something like this, with the purpose to destroy the stacked Ukrainian forces between two armies. So, and this is exactly, as I understand, the area where the Russians are planning to use these tactics, because it's very important, the factor, to know the foothold, they know the places, they know the terrain in this area, and 49th Brigade exactly is doing the things. They're learning the schemas, the grounds, the fortifications, the Ukrainian forces. So I expect some activity, and this is going to be not like full-scale Russian offensive operation, but probably this is going to be something like a test attack, where the Russians will do the same as the Ukrainians in Krynki, to get the data, to analyze, and to make a conclusion whether it's worse creation of more air assault brigades, or it's just like dead end way without any possibilities to develop and to get something interesting from this theory or these tactics. So, but very important update was noted, I repeat once again, by the Institute of Study of War and the Russian military experts. So let's wait what is going to be, what kind of changes this tactics is going to bring to the situation on the ground. When talking about the situation on the ground on the other front lines, we haven't received anything interesting. The front lines, of course, the clashes, there are FPV drone strikes, Lancet strikes. We will discuss them during the evening update. And the important things here is coming from Kiev. And when talking about Kiev, for example, let's discuss once again the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine published the video of air defense work. And according to information we have, the Ukrainians managed to shoot down just 8 missiles, and they destroyed Ha-59 cruise missile and 7 Ha-100 101, 555 or 55 air-launched missiles. The rest of missiles managed to get the target and to deal significant damage to Ukrainian infrastructure. A very interesting update is coming also from Ukrainian sources. They tried to save the security agreement with the United Kingdom, because everybody understands that this is just a white paper without any obligations. But the Ukrainians are saying that if ever Russia attacks Ukraine, United Kingdom, Ukraine will declare war to Russia as well. So it's like a very important agreement. So who knows? And also another interesting video we got from Kiev. Currently we can find more and more cases in Kiev when young men use the clothes of women, trying to avoid demobilization process and not to get under somewhere in Avdiivka. Obviously, during the next 2 months or weeks, we're going to see more and more cases when young people will dress like a woman with the purpose to avoid and not to get under the mobilization process. Now we are moving to the Red Sea. We have also some updates from this territory. The United States of America and its allies continue their, let's say, operation in Yemen. Today we got the video how the results of missile strikes in the port city Hodeidah. On these strikes we can see a few buildings, few farms were destroyed with a very expensive Tomahawk missiles, cruise missiles, but most of the military experts are saying that the results of those attacks, videos and probably the explosions were very big, but the results is close to zero. But other sources are saying that if the situation in the Red Sea continues, and as we can see the situation continues because it's just since the beginning of 2024 we have significant number of cases with FPV drone strikes, missile attacks against the ships and trade ships that goes, and not just trades but military ships that goes along this area. So obviously the United States of America need to find another solution, and one of the solution is to start a landing operation somewhere in let's say Yemen, because it's obviously it's important to have some base on the shore, like something like this, and for this purpose of course the best solution is to establish control over some port city, and from the port city you can get allies, you can, let's say, even mobilize some local people and to continue ground operation deep inside of Yemen. So very likely this situation might happen. When talking about coalition, for example, the United Kingdom, aircraft carriers can't be sent to Red Sea because of Navy staffing crisis. So we have a lot of updates about Navy staffing crisis in United Kingdom. But Germany will join coalition and they will send their ship. And this is like not just France, States and United Kingdom ships are going to be there. Also, Germany will be a part of this coalition. So we'll see what is going to be next. But once again, very likely the ground operation in Yemen is going to take place. And that's it for the short video. Military Summer channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.